Hi, thank you all for being here with us virtually this evening. Merci à tous d'être ici virtuellement avec nous ce soir. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the Gallery McClure, or the McClure Gallery, is situated in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal, the unceded Indigenous territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. Nous sommes reconnaissants de pouvoir exercer nos activités sur ce territoire et de partager notre expérience avec la communauté. We respect the continued connections with the past, the present, and the future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. This evening, I have the great pleasure of introducing Paul Machnik. Paul is the curator for our current exhibition, An Artistic Dialogue, John Heward and Harold Klunder, which features the collaborative works of these two Canadian abstract artists. They came together to collaborate on a series of unique prints with Montreal printmaker Paul Machnik. Les deux artistes travaillent déjà indépendamment avec Paul au son studio PM à Montréal depuis plusieurs années, quand ils ont décidé d'explorer le médium de carborundum en tandem. The resulting works, which evolved over a period of 2 years from 2017 to 2018, mark a noteworthy and historic collaboration between these esteemed Canadian artists and stand as an homage of one artist to another, as the prints were concluded in the month prior to John's passing. To give you a sense of the exhibition, we will now play a little video of the gallery space with the exhibition. As I mentioned earlier, the works were created in the Studio PM of Montreal, a fine art printmaking workshop that was established in 1978 by master printmaker Paul Machnik, who apprenticed under Richard Lacroix at La Guilde Graphique Montréal. Studio PM has editioned original work in etching and aquatint by renowned artists. Paul and his partner Bess Mulstock have conducted printmaking workshops in the Canadian Arctic, as well as in international contexts. You can find there, on trouve des graveurs produits par Studio PM dans les grandes collections, notamment au Musée des Beaux-Arts du Canada à Ottawa, au Musée canadien de l'Histoire à Gatineau à Québec, et au Musée de l'Homme à Paris. So I'm very pleased to introduce Paul, and this evening Paul will talk with us about this exhibition at the McClure Gallery. I'd also like to ask you to add your questions to the chat box, and I will pose your questions at the end of our little interaction, or maybe in between. We'll see how it goes. Veuillez ajouter vos questions dans la boîte de discussion. Je poserai vos questions à la fin. So now we will hear from Paul himself. Welcome, Paul.
Hello there. Hi, everybody. Hey. Nice to meet you, even though I can't see you all. Can you hear me well? Yeah. Good. Yeah. So just I wanted to thank the McClure Gallery and the staff, everybody involved in having the exhibition and giving us this opportunity, especially at this time of what we're all going through. You know, it's a difficult time, and this has been a struggle or an effort that's gone, I should say, for almost 11 years in total. Actually, it wasn't just those 2 years that you referred to, but we started in 2008 with the two artists collaborating in a more simple fashion, and then moving on to the carborundum in 17 and 18. So thank you very much. And I also wanted to thank everybody involved in getting me and the work to this point, because it's really been a tour de force on many sides.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I think we're going to, are we going to do the work in the studio? You're going to introduce Milo there?
Sure, yes, I will. Yeah.
Because you're in the studio right now, which is a real treat, because normally we would have been in the gallery, but under these circumstances we can't be. So we're in the studio where all of this happened.
Milo has graciously agreed to ink up one of the plates that's in the exhibit. It's by the way, here's Milo. Say hi.
Hello.
Hi, Milo.
So he inked it up earlier in the day today with the intention of just finishing off as we're on camera, as it were. This is one of the carborundum plates. It's on plexiglass. The carborundum is the toothy sand acrylic medium that was used to give it the grit. This is one of the plates that Harold accomplished, Harold Klunder. And there was another plate I'll point it out later, which was John's effort, and the two were sandwiched together, overlapping one another. But for today's purposes, we're only going to pull this one plate. Otherwise, we'd be here till midnight.
Okay. Well, it looks amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll take a little bit of time to organize, but we can talk in the meantime. Yeah. Here. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
I'm going to point to you while he's organizing the paper. Another one of the plates that of Harold's. I'm having to aim the camera. Sorry, Dan.
Okay. A little bit right.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Ridiculous. Yeah. So again, having the ink residue on the plate here. Let me turn the camera around so you can see him registering it on the press.
Okay. That's great. And what? Yeah, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, it was just in terms of like the first foray, and as I mentioned in 2008, was on a much simpler level with a dry point. So each artist worked just scratching into the plate, and we editioned those side by side or one on top of the other on a single sheet of paper, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was our first sort of attempt or go at it. But then in retrospect, we wanted to do something on a much more grandiose scale. And the idea of working with the carborundum came about. I'm going to point to this one image here that was John's attempt with, he used for the black his acrylic paint that he uses in his own painting on the plate, on the steel plate, which acted as the tooth, or like the carborundum is in this case, holding the ink. And so we printed the black, and then he, as an afterthought, went over it with the ink, the red ink. So it's a twofold. It was kind of the impetus for this whole project, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Let's see why it's really gorgeous.
With the black, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah. So anyway, just to say, we had the paper made specially at Papeterie Saint Armand.
Wow.
It's almost like a 500 gram and 30 by 40 roughly. So anyway, he's just now laying the sheet over top, somewhat in register. These sheets are oblong, so not perfectly symmetrical. Mm-hmm. Are we going to miss here? Yeah. Okay.
So while he's doing this process, could you talk a little bit about the origin of the show, of the idea of having this show, and what gave you the idea of bringing these two artists together for a collaboration? You kind of just gave us a bit of a hint with the piece that you showed us. I know they had already been working with you individually in your atelier. What was the idea behind this collaboration?
I'm often trying to draw people together, and they became both friends over the years. So the fact that they're musicians as well as being artists and whatnot, that in of itself is a collaborative process. And so it seemed natural to try to go at it together, if you will, almost in a jam session fashion. And then, it gets like being a painter or an artist is a very solitary occupation. And so getting involved in a twosome or threesome or whatever, you get out of your comfort zone, and often things happen that are unusual to your own mode. So I was looking for that kind of to break bounds with them, and see what would happen.
Great.
Yeah. So this is going to be a proof in the pudding type of thing. We haven't done this for almost a year or two, so God knows what will come of this. But I'm hoping at least you'll see the process. Even if it doesn't work 100%.
Absolutely, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Memory foam.
Yeah.
Memory foam.
Milo is mentioning this is not the typical blanket. It's
Okay.
it's the memory foam that one uses on a bed.
Yes.
And it's the only thing that really would give us that depth of pressure on such a thick depth of character on the plate. So here we are. Am I pointing well enough?
Yeah. I mean,
I should have turned the camera around, mind you.
It's really magical to see this process.
Yeah. There you go. It came off well for all things considered. Yeah. Wonderful. Milo.
And John's on top of it.
Yeah. So John's plate, such as this one, the black, would have been printed as well in tandem after this one had dried. So
right over top of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go for that.
Wow.
That experience.
Wow, thank you so much for that. That's
sorry about my camera working.
No, I think everyone was able to see it quite well. And it is a special experience to be able to see it live like that, giving a real sense of what's going on in where the pieces in the gallery actually came from. So thank you.
So you're welcome.
And do you want me to? I have another little question here that might be good for this time. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more why you specifically suggested or chose to use carborundum as a way of approaching this process, especially with the Catch and Hold central series in this exhibition.
Right. It was, as I mentioned before, John had used the paint as his medium on the plate, which was unusual. But after a time, like after one or two proofs, it tended to wear. So I thought, I love Motherwell personally. And I was looking at Harold's paintings in his studio. He was using jute bags for coffee beans as a canvas, and it had that very textural character. And I thought, geez, I wonder if the carborundum would act in the same fashion in terms of printmaking. So we gave it a go, and it was like a shooting in the dark, like we were not having done it before. It was taking a chance. But that's what I really appreciate about both artists, that they were willing to try something out and not knowing, what would come of it, type of thing. Yeah. I want to mention something that I had also engaged Harold to work with me with another artist, Kenedjuak Ashevak from the north, and I specifically pulled out one set of the works that he had worked on of hers with her. And so it's also another collaboration, but I don't know, I forgot what year it was now. But it's akin to what Harold was really keen at, which was that collaboration kind of thing,
Right. Okay, you're showing it right now. Maybe Catherine, if you could pull to the studio PM shot and bring it up bigger. It'd be great if you can.
If she's there.
Well, she is.
Maybe she went for a coffee.
No, she's doing her magic. There she is.
I'm going to put the camera on the other side here. I didn't do this very well yesterday, so I hope I do it properly this time. 1 second. No, it's okay. I better not.
Oh no, I think we lost him. That's what happened yesterday. Okay. I'm sure we will have Paul back in a moment. He has accidentally cut himself off from the show. So in the meantime, I encourage you to continue. I see a couple of comments in the chat, in the comment section, and I agree. It's really stunning work and really special to be able to see this process. So if you have any particular questions that you'd like to ask, please do. Hi again.
Hi, sorry about that. I did that yesterday. I thought I had practiced it, but anyway, can I point the camera again?
Yes.
Sorry, and so people can get an idea. So this is Ken Edgewack with Harold Klunder, almost 10 years ago, roughly now, maybe 8 years ago. So,
Great.
yeah, and she was using sugar lift in this case, as opposed to the carborundum. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Beautiful.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so to discuss other things, I know you gave me a list of questions here.
Yeah, well, I have another question here that I can pose, and I'm sure we have some questions from the audience. And just to let you know, everybody really appreciates. We have multiple comments about appreciative people are for being able to see that process and how.
Thank you. Yeah.
How special that is. Okay, so my question is, so you call the catalog, because there is a catalog that's associated with this exhibition.
Yeah.
And it's called Counterpoint. And I was wondering if you could talk about that title a little bit. And for the people who know the artist, they seem to have very different aesthetics in their individual work and their individual practices. And these aesthetics seem to really play off of each other in what you have been showing us and what we see in the gallery. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about that, maybe the relationship to counterpoint in music, because as you mentioned, they were both
musicians. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was initially Harold had thought of the title No Second Take, and that was in reference to an interview with Neil Young, a radio interview on CBC, where he described going into the recording studio and saying to the effect that if you're prepared mentally and emotionally, spiritually, for what you're about to undertake, it shouldn't have to go through a repeat process. So ideally, the first take is always the one that has the most energy and guts. And so he was considering that as a title. But then we were talking about the fact that, well, in fact, in this case, and I'll describe that later, is that there was a second take. In fact, the first carborundum series where they were working side by side was a ho-hum kind of, how should I put it? It was very reserved. And so when we looked at it months and almost a year later, after going through that back and forth with Harold at a distance, we thought, geez, it could really use something. And so they both decided to go back into it. And that's where really the idea of counterpoint, or contrepoint as the title is in French, made sense. Because it's a musical term, and it's in terms of two or more voices in tandem, right? And also I talked a lot to John about the fact that he was a drummer, and drumming in the early days in Africa was a form of messaging. So it is like his or their imprint for time immemorial. And so I like that sense. And it was Victoria that came up with it, by the way, Victoria Leblanc, that proposed it, and we latched onto it.
That's wonderful. I think that you can really see a sense of communication between the two, like the play in the pieces themselves.
Yeah.
And we'll have that catalog available in the gallery as well for people for sale.
It should be. It's being printed as we speak, and it should be ready to be picked up on Monday, so I can drop the copies off. But I have to tell you that this is the first time I did a catalog, and boy, is it a process. So I really have a lot more respect for the catalogs that I take for granted now. It's such a elongated process, and the fact that it had to be in both languages and then check back with the artist and so on, it was wow. I have to thank a lot of people, but very much so my partner Bess for all the work.
I'm really excited to see that.
Thanks, Bess.
Thanks for pulling that together. I do have a question here that I'm going to throw in because it's related to what you were just showing us. So Grace has asked, could you explain the sugar lift, the process of sugar lift?
Yeah, sure. Sugar lift is, with etching, traditionally speaking, you're drawing through a wax surface on the surface of a plate, so scratching through. And sugar lift allows for a much more painterly approach. So technically speaking, you're mixing a sugar-based solution with a dye like a India ink, or not India ink, but India ink, and it's like whatever you paint is in a gesture is eventually we lift it off, or it comes off, and that's what gets etched. So your stroke, your line, your whatever you lay down is what you're going to have as an etch, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So in the case of the Kenedja wax, she was using on top of the sugar after it dried white ground or a medium of soap and pigment, white pigment, to sort of give it a resist, a painterly resist.
Great.
I don't know if I explained that well enough for everybody.
That is very, very clear. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we have images going here that of Harold and John kind of in progress in the process of creating these pieces. Yeah. I was wondering if you could also talk a little bit about the last collaboration, the one called Fragments, and how that final collaboration came to be.
That was in part because of the fact that I was pulling together the catalog, and most of it, had to do with the visuals, of course. And at this point, John had given me a manuscript of his that he'd intended or wanted to publish, but it never did. I didn't realize I have, I think, probably the only copy that is in existence. And I hadn't, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I hadn't read it before his passing, but I did so. And I was struck with the delicacy and the strength of his words. And I thought, given his absence, that it would be nice and what do you call, in his commemoration, to have his words included in the catalog. So I suggested to Harold, and he agreed to work again in tandem with those words. And the way John laid the text, or whatever, like a haiku type of thing, out on the page was very deliberate, almost like a musical score. So it'd be in the right-hand corner, bottom, middle kind of thing. And Milo printed them up just on simple bond paper and gave him an outline to describe, the format for the catalog and everything, unbeknownst to us. And anyway, Harold went to town with it and incorporated the outline as well. So he was painting through, through the whole surface. You didn't know what to expect. So it again is a real tour de force on Harold's part in response. It was magical.
Right. So it really is a continuation of the Counterpoint.
That's right.
Beyond
Yeah.
after John's passing. That's great.
They're framed. They're not to be sold. They're for Harold's personal keeping. But I hope people can get a chance to see or read them if they can get a hold of the catalog. Yeah.
Right. Great.
It's a shame in this day, these days that we're facing that. But anyway, I'm really just honored that we can have this up on the wall and have people at least take it in somewhat.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to keep going despite what's going on in our difficult situations, to still have the pieces in the space and be able to see them from the street. We've already had comments from the community. I encourage people to look from the street, and also we're going to have our 360 Google 360 shot of the exhibition, where you can tour the exhibition, basically, be starting tomorrow likely. So it's still there. We'll still be able to experience it and honor these beautiful works. So those pieces aren't actually they're in the they're specifically for the catalog.
Yeah. And it was great that we were able to frame them because they're so delicate. And, Michael Effort, who did the framing, was masterful in that regard. I should have said something about the photographs that are streaming, and basically these are the first sort of proofs of the plates as they were, how should I put it, with the carborundum and with John's use of masking tape as his medium. It's not very evident here, but right in front of Harold there is a light tape image, and that was John's tape image. Yeah. So I'll be honest, the whole thing was it still was not in the bag, as they say. We were not sure about the results and whatnot, but the fact that they decided and agreed to go back in on these pieces is what really made the difference. And so when you look at the exhibit or the works in the exhibit with all their majesty, is because they had agreed to go back into these pieces after they were printed, in Harold's case with watercolor, and in John's case with the acrylic, so on. So at the end of this, I understand you're going to preview just a minute or so of Harold using the watercolor on the pieces.
Yeah, but I mean, we could even, Catherine, if you wanted to pull that up right now, it seems like an appropriate point, and we can replay that again at the end if you're ready. Because it's only a minute, and it gives a real sense of that, going back to the way that Harold was treating the works by going back and painting directly.
It is incredible to watch as he works, because as I said, we did with the Kenedjuaks and whatnot. It's like there's no hesitation and such a deliberate motion in his. It's like watching a dancer when he works. So
I think she's got it up here. Oh,
is it?
He's going to. While we're waiting for that to be pulled up, let's see. I just don't want to cut over. I think I can't talk while it's going.
I'll shut up.
I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, it might be having a little bit of technical difficulties with that. So while Catherine's working on that, Teresa had asked, were the smaller works done in the same way? The smaller works.
The smaller works, if she's referring to the dry points, no, they were just as dry point is. You're working directly into the plate without any resist. It's scratching directly in the plate, and that's one of the mediums I love the best. The very sort of toothy look to the print, And it's surprising because they both have heads. They're called two heads. They both utilize that the self-portrait as their reference, and again they're dialoguing with one another.
Great.
Yeah.
So it looks like there might be some difficulties with the video. Oh, here we are.
There. Okay.
We can.
Harold had grown a beard by this point. The time had evolved. James Campbell has written a text in the catalog, for the catalog, and he referred to Harold's work as the corpus over John's skeleton, you know, and I don't mean to be gross, but you know, John's is very sort of rectangular and structural, and Harold's is like filling the page and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely see that.
There's a real luminosity to the work. And they're not framed, by the way, so they're, you know, we mounted them with magnets and whatnot. So
that's great. So you can really get a sense of the texture and the work.
Yeah. And so that's it.
Okay, and another question that I have is, I mean, you're sitting in the studio where this collaboration grew, where it was born, and I was wondering if you could just share one of your favorite memories. I know there probably are so many, but maybe one of your favorite memories of working with these two incredible artists in the space.
Well, certainly because you know, I had a long collaboration with both, and they were very willing to experiment and try different things. For instance, with Harold, I remember developing a plate that was something like 21 feet long. We had to create a tray on the roof to etch it out in the outdoors and so on. And then it was so big that we ended up chasing the City of Montreal paving crew from one day to another to be allowed to proof the thing with their steamroller on the fresh pavement. And that was one of those funny incidents where, you know, it wasn't quite working. The steamroller was going over what I was using as a under padding for carpet, and somehow it just wasn't working. There was, you know, as with the City of Montreal, there's often more crew than is necessary. But one guy waved at the fellow in the steamroller to back off, and he ripped off my rubber blanket under padding, and he told the steamroller guy to go back over directly on the paper, and lo and behold, the darn thing printed well. So it was, you know, 21 feet, one sheet of paper, a long roll of paper. But those kind of moments where, you know, you have to kind of wing it, and so there was, you know, when something does work, it's incredible. And then similarly with John, you know, he was very much a sort of a mentor to me. You know, he'd invite me to his studio, his workspace, and we'd often go for lunch at a Polish charcuterie on Saint-Viateur. He'd have his tripe soup, and I'd have usually pierogi and whatnot. But it was that intimacy, you know, having a chat as friends, in addition to the fact that we were collaborating as art in the arts. You know?
Mm-hmm. An extension of the relationship beyond the studio.
And that's the whole thing, I think. Really, it's not just the act of you know, putting something on paper, but it's the what happens between us. You know, the communication and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it feels like from my perspective, looking at the artworks, it's capturing that an aspect or a section of that relationship, a moment in time.
Yeah.
I
I've
would,
been very, 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 very fortunate in the career that I have to have known incredible artists, incredible people over the years, and John and Harold are, right up there.
I have a question, or there's two questions from Teresa that kind of relates to this idea of the relationship building. She wanted to know how long was the collaborative process between the two artists, the duration of them working together on these pieces, and was this their first time collaborating together?
No, because we had done, as I mentioned, in 2008, the little dry point things that are in the exhibit. So that was a first go, and we had them in the drawers. Nothing, they weren't put out there, or they weren't in the gallery scene, so to speak. But it was in 2008 when I wanted to do something on a more momentous level with the two of them. Thinking back to the fact that John had, gone back and reworked his work, and Harold too often went. Harold would take a newspaper article and paint over it just in a gestural fashion, and leave it hanging for months and sometimes years on end. And it was those kind of works that were overlapping, a double effort that I was intrigued with. The blackness of a newspaper article versus his color. Here's a good example right here is the layered plates, one over top of one another. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they became friends, knowing me, I thought it was just a natural, that we collaborate. And it was a 2-year process from beginning to end for this whole undertaking, the carborundum thing.
And would be like on an individual piece, how long would that? I'm sure each piece was unique in terms of the length of time. Yeah. On average, how long would it take?
I think they were in the studio for like a week or 4 or 5 days type of thing. But then the whole effort of having that dry and then having us proof that and then go back. Harold wanted it just so in terms of the coloration and the tonalities, very, very specific. And he was back in his hometown in Flesherton, so we were trying to do it over the internet or communicating in terms of color. It just wasn't working. So it was like 6 to 8 months or a year before he came back to the studio, and we went back into it, that we really got off and running. So really it was like 2 years, but individual pieces, God knows, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the inking, my gosh, for Milo, it's something like half a day to 3/4 of a day just to pull one. It's quite involved.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I love these images. They give you, they add a richness to, the artworks themselves are obviously extraordinary. Yeah. But in terms of the depth of the story, these images of them together really adds to the exhibition.
Yeah. You could see the friendship with the two, and the respect too. I mentioned in the catalog, because I had to write a little blurb, that it's almost like watching two graffiti artists in an alleyway, and they're going at it on the wall, careful to respect one another's distance, but then also kind of being very sort of abrupt too, so it's fun.
Yeah, they're kind of like, again, like musicians. They're playing off of each other. A little bit of like a jazz experience.
Yeah,
responding to each other as they go along.
A jam session and whatnot.
Exactly.
I'm just going to point the camera at another series that this is not part of the show, but that we just finished of Harold's. Can I do that? These are with Shin Kale, and Milo was about a month at it printing. So we're just now pulling them together for Harold to consider.
Amazing.
Yeah. So there we are. I
Great.
meant to show you a bit of the inking and whatnot. I mean, the ink materials and whatnot. I do appreciate everybody's attention. I hope I'm not boring you to death.
Oh, no, not at all. Very opposite. I mean, people are
Thank
really, I
you,
mean,
guys.
you know, for every comment of somebody saying that they're enjoying this, there's probably another 10 people, 30 people. I'm not sure how many are joining us this evening, but there's quite a few. And
Yeah.
I think I speak on behalf of everyone. This is really insightful.
Thank you,
kind
dear.
of behind the scenes experience is very unique and a real treat.
Thanks a lot, and best of luck with the show. Even under the circumstances, and I really, really appreciate everybody's help. You know, I know it's been a struggle with us getting things right sometimes.
Well, I think we did it. I think we really, it's a beautiful show, beautifully hung.
Thank you.
It's we're very, very fortunate to have this work at the McClure Gallery, and I want to thank you for that, and thank Milo for this experience as well. Thank you, Milo.
I should say a shout out to Victoria LeBlanc for her help and whatnot. And again to Bess for sticking up with me. She's had to put up with a lot.
Oh, well, we're really, really happy. And I want to thank everyone for being here with us this evening. Notre communauté, merci d'être ici avec nous ce soir. Je vous encourage de venir voir l'exposition Par la vitrine. Even though we're closed until February 8th, you can come and see the work from the street window. As of tomorrow, we're going to have our 360 view of the exhibition on our website, so look out for that. And then probably by Monday, I imagine, we should have the audio recorded interview between Harold and Victoria LeBlanc that will also be on our website.
And don't forget the catalog, too.
And don't forget the catalog. The catalog is going to be available as well. And I think maybe, Catherine, if we could once again play that little video. I think somebody had asked to see the images of, I know it's at the end, but to see the images of the exhibition again. So as we're leaving, maybe we could run that video that you shared with us at the very, very beginning. So,
thanks. So these are the dry points, by the way, that were done in 2008. The first few. Okay. Yeah. And the word fragment there on the left. And the print that Milo pulled is just there on the left with John's on top.
Great.
Yeah. So there's not too many people in the gallery, I see.
Yeah. It's a little empty tonight. So once again, thank you so much, Paul.
All the best.
Milo, and for everyone for being here. So merci beaucoup à tout le monde et bonsoir et à bientôt, j'espère.
Bye.